Hi, everybody, and welcome to our lucky number 7 episode, Krampus. We're so delighted to be able to talk to you about this wily beast and the sense of community that he brings wherever he goes. And we are also delighted to introduce Kathy Kelly, who started Krampus Asbury Park. And she needs no introduction. She is a truly remarkable human being. And if you can make it to Krampus Asbury Park in Asbury Park, New Jersey, you should definitely check it out. Friday, they're going to have the film festival. And Saturday, there's going to be events all day long, starting off with the kids. Plenty of things for kids to do. And then as the night begins to fall, the Krampuses really start to march towards the center of the town. And it's quite thrilling. I was there a few years ago. That's where I got these horns. I got these horns from Paranormal Books, which is Kathy Kelly's store. Also plenty of things on offer there for you. There's a Museum of Haunted Objects, lots of different ghost tours that you can take. So definitely, if you're the type of person who likes to add a little spookiness into your holiday season, please check it out. Without further ado, I present to you Krampus. This is a show about authentic, deep connection to the in-between spaces. Join me and my guests as we explore the boundaries between heaven and earth, between the living and the dead, between night and day. Welcome to Mysteries, Graveyards, and the Human Psyche. I'm your host, Melissa B. On this week's episode,
this was not like some monster running around. This was a real folkloric way of talking about the balance of nature and behavior.
Those could be Santa's sleigh bells, or they could be the cowbells of Krampus. In this dark season, perched in between fall and spring, we have a choice that we will make. Will we align ourselves with the goodness in us, or will we align ourselves with those dark forces? We are the ones that make this choice, and we will be held accountable. If we are good little children, we will be visited by St. Nicholas, and if we are bad little children, then Krampus is coming. Humanity must have darkness and light. And this dark season is one in which opposites can flow into one another. So welcome to my Yuletide Light and Darkness mini-series. And we are so honored this evening to have with us Kathy Kelly, the owner of Paranormal Books, New Jersey, and also the creator of Krampus Fest in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Welcome to you, Kathy. And please tell us a little bit about how Krampus Fest began.
So this is our seventh um, Krampus, Krampus Asbury Park. It actually started about, I would say about 14 years ago when I first opened up the shop. I'm a lover of all things folklore. I'm a lover of all things fringe. Anything that terrifies a child, I'm all about it. And honestly, I really love kids. And but I really love storytelling. When I look at what the basis of everything that I really love storytelling. And I think it's communal, and I think it's important, and I think it's an art. And I'm Irish, so, born and raised Blarney. And so I had a friend who was someone who's ultimately become a friend, came into the shop, I would say very quickly after I opened, within like 5 or 6 months after I opened. And he was a real manic guy. In fact, he introduced himself as Crazy Tony, right? That's how he introduced himself. So clearly he was comfortable with that moniker. And he was a great artist. And he asked me, he said, "Have you ever heard of this event in Germany called Krampus?" And he kind of went around and told me what it was about. And he said, there was this beast, and the beast comes and it does all of this. And I was like, that sounds crazy. But it kind of stuck in the back of my head, that there was something around the holidays, around Yuletide. And then I kind of picked it up along the way, and I started doing research on different Yuletide traditions. And I realized that this was not like some monster running around. This was a real, folkloric way of talking about the balance of nature and behavior, and, all of those different things. And so about 7 years ago, I was like, you know what? We're just going to do it here. I'm going to figure it out. I don't know what they do in Germany. I don't know what they do in Austria. I'm going to do what I think it's about. And we just did it. We just did it. And about 150 to 200 people showed up. And I had incorporated into it a film festival as well. So we had done a Friday night film festival. I had always done Pictures with Yeti as a charity. And so we just added Krampus to that. And then the next day we had a series of kind of DIY fun events for families. And we had a bunch of people show up for it. And it was hilarious because in addition to people just really having a lot of fun with it, nobody else in the town knew that we were doing it because they weren't paying the slightest bit of attention. All sitting in their restaurants and their coffee shops, and then this horde of 200 people screaming and hollering, and some of them dressed like, horned creatures, are literally stampeding, down the sidewalks to this park. And it was hilarious. And then it just became the beginning of the holiday season for everybody at that point. And we did it for 5 years. Last year was modified because of COVID. And I wasn't going to do it last year, but so many people reached out to me and said, it's the only thing my kids want to do with us. They're getting older. It's the only thing they still want to do with us. So we did it. We did a completely modified, and responsible one. And then we decided this year, we're just going to go back to what we know and kind of keep it low key, but fun, and have it be all about storytelling and all about and terrifying children. And I was really lucky in 2018, and I went to Germany and I got to experience the real Krampuslauf, and it was awesome. And there were thousands of people. And what I realized was we don't do exactly what they do, but we really got the vibe of it. Like it felt like ours. And I was really proud that we kind of had found that right balance where we were kind of honoring what, culturally Krampus represented. And it was a ton of fun. So I came back with a lot of ideas.
No, it's interesting because I was just talking to the lady who does Sinterklaas in
Right.
Rhinebeck, New York, and it's also that same type of thing where it comes from the Dutch tradition, but when it meets America, we get to decide what we like, and how it's different for us. You know, we have a lot more diversity here. How is it different?
Interesting. Americans are Americans because we become Americans, and we kind of, and this is absolutely not political or anything like that, but it's a, America is a state of mind, right? It's a belief in these different ideals, whereas in other countries you have this shared history. But my family came to America in the late 1950s, so I don't have this history that goes back to the Civil War. That's directly, I identify with it. I appreciate it from a cultural perspective, but it's not my history. And so we kind of lack that. So we kind of choose, and we can choose what we want and what we don't want. What I came back with, though, was kind of a simplification of what I had done in the past, which was I had tried, and we were successful, and I loved doing it. We do something called the Monsters of Yule, which is a walking tour where we talk about all of the different monsters that are associated with the Yuletide. And what that does is kind of pulls together the idea that this is not uniquely German or uniquely Icelandic or uniquely Northern European, that Irish people have this, Greek people have this, Italian people have, and it's all about the balance of things, and it predates anything Christmas related, but when I came back from Germany, I think what I came back with was, keep it simple, it's the Krampus, stupid, you know what I mean? Like just focus on that, and focus on those things that people really, really love, and encourage people to participate. And I don't think we're not traditional, because we're creating a new tradition. And 7 years in, I had a kid come in last year, and he was 11 years old. And he said to me, I have 10 pictures of myself with Yeti. Every single year since the year he was born, this was his tradition. And that's what I realized is, as we're doing these things, we are kind of piecemealing different cultures, but we're creating a tapestry of these things. We're not taking them and changing this specific thing. It's like we're making this stew, of all of these things. And there's a common thread through all of these different folklore and cultural identities that still rings true to us, and rings true to pretty much every cultural identity. Everybody has a story about a boogeyman. Everybody has a story to keep their kids from running in the woods. Everybody has a story about, like, if you're good, this happens, and if you're bad, this happens. What I really love about Krampus is Krampus is the antidote to kids being afraid of Santa, right? So kids are inherently afraid of Santa. They love him, but they're like, this guy holds my fate in his hands, and I don't even know anything about him. Like, how does he know when I'm sleeping? How does he know when I'm awake? There's something really arbitrary about him. So if Santa shows up, you're not sure, and now I'm supposed to jump on his lap, but he could give me coal. Krampus takes that away, right? If Santa shows up, you're good. If Krampus shows up, you know what's coming. You know what I mean? And I kind of really like that. And I also like the idea that Krampus is about repercussions and balance. And in our society, a lot of times, the absence of reward is considered punishment. And that's never been the case. Like that, the world doesn't generally work that way. And Krampus, I always say to people, if Krampus is coming for you, you have a pretty good idea why. It's not going to be a surprise. Like, you didn't just not eat your vegetables, you did something else. But what I found that I really love is kids are really, they really understand it. They really get what we're doing. And when I came back from Germany, I think what I really enjoyed, and I think one of the ideas that I came up with was really keeping it about that. Really, it's great that it's about art, and it's great that we have crafts, and it's great that we have all of this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's about kids safely kind of enjoying being a little bit afraid, and knowing that they're safe. You know what I mean? Like having a monster chase them around, but then they win. At the end of the day, they win.
Right. Right. It's so important. It's like what Bruno Bettelheim says in the book, The Uses of Enchantment. And Jim Henson used to tout the same thing. And he made Dark Crystal, which scared the pants off of
Right.
my generation, which
That's
is that
right.
kids need a little bit of fear because in the fairy story and the dark tale, we experience a little bit of the terror, but then, as you said, we win at the end. Uh, and I think it's so fascinating that a creature that's scary and darkness, creates so many good memories within the community in Asbury Park and in Germany too. That's
Right.
the balance that you're talking about, right?
Well, what's really interesting about Krampus is Krampus was actually outlawed in Germany, right? So what you had was you had this festival, this cultural icon that had been around a long, 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 long time, and had become part of the Christian celebration of the holidays, but really predates that. It's really a Yule tide kind of thing. And in the United States, we don't really understand what Yule tide is. Certainly some people do, but most of us don't. It's like Christmas, it's Hanukkah, it's Kwanzaa, it's those specific things. They're all kind of in December. But Yule was a different thing, right? And then it kind of got co-opted and it became this, and that's great. But in the late 1930s, early 1940s, it became illegal to celebrate Krampusnacht. And in the span of 30 years or 35 years that it stopped, it was lost. That's how fast you can lose a deep rooted and a deep seated part of your cultural identity. And it was in the late 1980s, the early 1990s that a bunch of young people were like, no, we want it back. We heard this from our, sitting on our grandparents' knees, and that sounds cool and that sounds fun and we want it back. And so they started doing this. And when you go over there, you see these people are artists. I mean, there's no two ways about it. These masks are phenomenal works of art. One of the things I absolutely loved when I was over there was the scariest, I will tell you this, the scariest Krampus that I saw was a 10-year-old kid. And he was completely dressed in Krampus attire. And he was part of this, over there, it's not a single Krampus, it's like a troupe. Right? So there's 30 of them and they all kind of march and they make different sounds with bells so you know who's coming. And these costumes cost $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. But this kid was about 10 years old and his father, was showing him how to be the Krampus, right? And I had a GoPro. I actually had a faux pro. It was not a real GoPro, but I had a camera and I was taking images of it. And he ran over to me and he took my camera. And, in America, I would be like, hey, give me my camera back. But I was like, let me see what's going to happen here because he's Krampus and, he can do whatever he wants. And he ran through the parade and he got me the best footage. And then he came back and he had a horse. And in Germany, they're allowed to hit you, right? So we don't permit anyone hitting anyone in ours. But he had so much fun. And he was so animated by this. And then I saw he had an older brother and his father, and his mother was dressed up as a Perchton, which is kind of a female version of Krampus. And I thought, wow, like this is something that somebody tried to take away from, the history and the heritage of not just one people, but a whole region of people. And just like that, it's being brought back and we're watching it be brought back, and it's being brought back differently, but it's still, it's like the saving of this historical or this cultural, and this cultural kind of icon and folklore. So yeah, but I think there's I'm a big Halloween person too, obviously, just given what I do. I have always loved the idea of terror and horror in a entertaining way. And what I love about Krampus is he's not a psychopath. He's not just running through the streets grabbing kids. He has a list. Like, he's part of a structure. He's middle management. Somebody is giving him his working papers, and I like that, because it means that it's not arbitrary. And I think, especially given what we've gone through in the last couple of years, what's terrifying, I think, to a lot of people, and certainly to kids, is this kind of arbitrary, this arbitrary fear, and this that they have no control over. Mm-hmm. And with Santa and Krampus, you have control. You can choose to not be on his list, but you have to be self-aware to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm. It's interesting because there's a lot said about the wild man archetype, about this wild man coming out of the woods, and especially at the dark time of year, and that without this wild man archetype, without a way of expressing the wildness of our nature, it is repressed and suppressed, and it comes out in weird ways and strange ways that maybe it's more arbitrary without having the wild man be a part of the flow of the year and the change of the seasons, and the from the light leaving us. And we have the beautiful light of Santa Lucia with wearing her candles, or the stories of the old god dies and then he's reborn again. And in those dark times from Halloween, let's say, until Yule, that are many creatures can come out, and spirits can come out, and there's more nighttime for them to walk around in other words.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of why this folklore was important, and was, it was more than just storytelling. It was necessary, right? So, imagine you're in the Black Forest. It's the middle of November heading into December. It's dark. You're in this little cottage, probably a couple miles away from anybody else. It's cold. You've got one little candle, right? It's 4:00 in the afternoon, and it's only going to get darker. And so you have a couple of things that are going to happen. Is number one, don't go in the woods, because honestly, they do want to kill you. It wasn't symbolic. If you did leave your little area, you were less safe. Yeah. So the darkness was conducive to storytelling, but it also was really a danger. There was a real danger out there, and not just from the perspective of like, I want to scare my kids away from, I don't want them to go out and get lost in the woods. There were predators out there that would, were dangerous. But yeah, I think all of this is about, all of this, and not to get, we're running around dressed as, monsters. And so it's, but all of it really is about the flow of the season and the dying of the world and the rebirth, and the fact that, that cultures saw it this way. And, we tend to think that we've elevated above that thought process, where we look back on it and we see that as kind of quaint. We look back and we say, well, isn't that charming that they thought that it was this, and what was symbolic? But we do exactly the same thing, right? We ring in the new year. We shoot fireworks into the sky in the new year, and we literally look at it as a rebirth. And we're just as engaged in that as past cultures were. We just maybe aren't as aware that we are. And we don't, our stories are being written now. So 150, 200, 300, 400, 500 years from now, they might be like, what did champagne mean? Why did they kiss people at midnight? But all of these things have an emotional, have a really strong emotional impact for us. And when I look at, and again, I just run a little festival, where we run around and scare kids. I mean, that's it. But when I start delving into this folklore, this is what I find fascinating. I find it fascinating that at 4:30 every year on the first Saturday in December, around 4:30, it starts to get dark. And I look out at my 30, 40, 50, hopefully 100 Krampuses. And I realize there's this excitement in the air. And it's not about this moment, it's about this moment forever. You know what I mean? Like it's been building to this. And I think that that's probably how people felt. I have a friend who's from Amsterdam, and I asked him, his name is Gunther. And I was like, have you ever heard of, Krampus? And he was like, have I heard of it? He was terrible. He's in his 50s, and he has these memories as a kid where he was like, we were terrified of him. But because of them being terrified, the joy of St. Nicholas was so much greater. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that that's really interesting too.
Yeah. I love that. I love the balance of the darkness and the light, which is why I was like, I have to have Krampus and I have to have Sinterklaas. I have to interview both of them and get the sides of the story.
Because you need both, right? And I think that's, these things both echo it within us, right? Yeah. Both of these things echo within us. And I always think I'm a child of immigrants. My mother and my father were both born and raised in Ireland. And I still have this real affection and a real affinity for dark, rainy days. And it's not just because I'm like a paranormalist or anything like that. It's because when I was a kid, my father was a roofer and he couldn't work when it was dark or when it was rainy. And so I always associate dark, rainy days with everybody being home in the house and safe. Like, and it's just this really simple thing that I have where it's like, ooh, everybody's going to be home safe. And I still love that. And I still go back to those moments. And that's what I think this is. These warm feelings that we have where we're collectively experiencing something. Like when I look in a kid's eyes and I see they get it, they can't articulate it, but they get it. Yeah. And I think to myself, this is going to be a tent pole of their childhood that they're going to remember. And even if they only come 3 or 4 times, they're going to say every year we would go to Krampus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I love that. And I love knowing that these are like little emotional time bombs that are going to have impacts. When they're 35 and they have their own kids, they're going to be like, wait, no, let's go to that because I remember how good this felt. And there's something profoundly innocent about it, and I think I really love that too.
I was just thinking about the time that I went to Krampus in Asbury Park, and there was a Krampus, and it was probably a dad with his son, and his little boy was in on it. So the little boy was in chains, and he was really acting like the best acting that I've ever seen a kid do. He was like, help me. And I was really like struck by it. And I was like, wow, that kid is really good. And I was watching him. And as I turned around, Krampus was right next to me and went, ah, and I really screamed. He got me. And both of them together got me. It was like the little boy and his dad. If it was his dad, maybe it was his uncle or his older brother.
I think it was that. I know exactly who you're talking about because their costume was phenomenal,
I was able to find that recording. Here it is.
And but I love that. I get these calls from people saying, my daughter and I have been working on our costumes all year. I don't know if there's something better than that. You know what I mean? That it's not, and I will say this too. I think sometimes that this stuff appeals to kids that maybe don't fit in other places. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where they're creative, or but they don't, you know, maybe they're not athletes, or maybe they're not musicians, or maybe they're not this. Maybe they're a different kid, and this is their opportunity to really deep dive, you know. And I absolutely love that. And I will tell you, it's like have been amazing. And you know, anytime a kid has an opportunity to creatively express themselves, I think it's great. And it's even better when it's like awesome, terrifying stuff for Krampus, you know.
Yeah. It's also beautiful to see the angels that come too.
Right.
And have those beautiful angels in contrast to these wild and woolly horned beasts, you know, with the snarling face
Right.
and the tongue, the pointy tongue, really tall ones, short ones.
Right.
Like all kinds of Krampuses, you know, the one with the baby in the basket already, you know,
Right.
like he had
Right.
he had an early pickup this
you know,
morning, you know.
exactly. Yeah, I had to get this one before I hit Asbury Park. There's a and there are monsters of Yule that are not negative, you know, or not, and I don't even really consider Krampus negative, but that are not terrifying. You know, you have like La Befana, the Christmas witch, and you know, there are people who show up as her now, and I love that, because what it means is this little weird community that we've created is expanding itself. It means that people came here and said, oh wait, if they're into this, I bet this would be okay. And, you know, that's what paranormal is about. That's what my whole business model is about. My whole, you know, I call it a business model, but it's really not. It's like that's what this whole thing that I do is about honestly pulling in as many different people, from not having boundaries, and pulling in as many different people to explore as many different things as we possibly can. Like, you know, we also do a Jersey Devil Festival, and when I started doing the Jersey Devil, people started talking to me about other folklore in New Jersey, and I was like, then let's have it be the Fable Festival, and let's do it all, because that's, you know, a lot of times we live in an echo chamber. It's not until we start experiencing other things that we learn about each other. And like, I didn't know anything about the other monsters of Yule when I started this, and now, you know, I every year I find a new one, and it's exciting to me. And again, you know, I think it's really creative. I try very hard though to stay kind of focused and not go too far afield, because but whoever comes, they can do whatever they want. But I try to stay focused so that I don't dilute it to the point that it's not enjoyable for people. You know what I mean? But I have found people to be remarkably creative, and even the film festivals. I mean, I remember the first 4 years that I did it, I was constantly soliciting movies. I was going on to different sites and saying, oh, you did this movie about this, can I use it? With this film, and everybody was always like, yeah, that's great. And this year, without promoting it at all, I had more than 40 films submit from 7 different countries. And, you know, that's remarkable. You know, that's remarkable.
That's wonderful. It just goes to show
Yeah.
you that people really like this. They like this, and they need this kind of an outlet, to have
Right.
these spooky stories. And that was always such a tradition that I tried to revive as well, when I found out that telling ghost stories on Christmas Eve, or telling them or at this time of year, was a tradition. And I try to revive that as much as
Right.
possible, because it feels natural. It doesn't.
Yeah, I agree. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, it's in the song, Scary Ghost Stories and Tales of the Glories. You know, it's in the song. Yeah, we do a tour here called Spirits of the Holidays, which is which is a hybrid of our ghost tour with a traditional Victorian storytelling tour. I will say one other thing, and why I think people become, why people become invested in stuff like this. You have time to do it now, right? Like the day is, and if you were a farmer, right, the day is short now. You can focus on different things, but people kind of, it's getting to December. I feel like they kind of back up off of, the workouts and having to be this place at this time and everything, like that they're willing to give themselves a little bit of a break to just kind of enjoy, the evening. And I think that whenever it's dark and whenever the wind is blowing, our minds automatically turn to dark matters. And when you're talking about ghost stories versus truly dark matters, I think it's probably going to be a fun evening, sitting around the fire, sitting around, even the one of the greatest ghost stories of all time, by Dickens. It's everybody's tradition. It's a ghost story. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm. And thinking at what time has gone by as we approach the end of the year, we think about the past, we think about the present, we think about the future, and those ghosts. That it's an interesting concept too. That the ghost of the past, there's a ghost of the present and a ghost of the future, and
right.
the decisions that you make from now on to the end of the year will damn you to be like Jacob Marley,
right,
or
right.
you could reach out to Bob Cratchit and Tiny Tim, and maybe your heart will be as good and golden as Tiny Tim's.
Right.
If only you have that. Let the spirit of this season into you, and also look back on the mistakes that you've made, and I should have married that girl at the Fezzy
right,
Wig
right.
party. I should have not been such a stingy one.
When did it change? When did it? I do have to say, I think an unsung hero of A Christmas Carol is, of course, Marley, because Marley is damned no matter what. He can't do better, right? He's got to walk. He has to walk the earth until his time is done. Yet he still goes back to try and save his friend. So even though he clearly was not a terrific guy, there's something redeemable about him. There's something about him that says, if I can make this guy's load lighter, I'm going to do that. And I can't think of kind of a better Christmas spirit or holiday spirit than that. It's I don't think we always think of Marley's ghost as the hero in that, but really, when you stop to think about it, it's, if he didn't choose to try to save Scrooge, Scrooge would not be saved. He would have thought he had, an old piece of mutton or an old piece of beef, and it would have, he would have been strolling in the afterworld with miles and miles of chain as well. But it just goes to show that, the wonderful thing about that particular story is that everybody is redeemable. Everybody has an opportunity to turn it around, and that is, of course, the whole concept of Yule and virtually every holiday that we celebrate during that time. It's about rebirth, right? It's about rebooting and having the opportunity to start over fresh. We're coming to the end, but we're gonna reboot. And it's a fun, it's obviously a fun time, but that's probably true. And I think we as a no matter where we are, but even culturally as Americans, and we definitely look at the new year as a new opportunity to start over.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking too about the Irish tradition of bury the wren. Give us a penny.
Right,
the
wren,
the king of all birds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an interesting thing too, because it is almost like trick-or-treating that the kids do, where they're coming from house to house and saying, give us
they get their pennies, right?
Yes.
They get, my mother and my father used to talk about that all the time. I think, the Irish Samhain and you know, the first jack-o'-lanterns were turnips in Ireland. It was a lot easier to carve pumpkins than it was to carve a turnip. But yeah, and I think kind of masquerading yourself but all of these things had to do with community. You know, like Krampus went house to house. You know, the kids go house to house. In trick-or-treating, we go house to house. And the idea is that not only are you, but you're safe to do it. You know, not only are you meeting, you know, but these are your neighbors. This is your community. You're safe to be going and doing these things. You know, you know, in Krampus in the 1920s, 1930s, all the way up through the 1950s, 1960s in different places. You know, they were teenage boys who would go and like beat the hell out of the younger kids, you know, you know, and they would get cakes and they would be sent away with it. And, you know, there's something sad about the changing of that in the United States now. Like we're doing more like trunk or treating and stuff like that. I'm not saying that that's not a good idea. I'm just saying that there is this loss, you know, there is a loss when we don't feel like we can be a part of our community, when we can't, you know, visit our neighbors. But I think that events like Sinterklaas and there's a lot of different events that do it's not, you know, it's not just, there's a lot of stuff around the holidays that do this stuff. I think those harken back to this small town festival vibe that feels authentic to people. And when I think about what people really want from stuff like this, it's a sense of authenticity. They want to feel like they're really a part of it, not just watching it, not being told about it, not reading it. They want to be there in the moment. They don't want Epcot. They want Paris. You know what I mean? They don't want, you know, they don't want a facsimile of it. They want the reality of it. And I think that's why these low-tech festivals that are, it's like make your own sign, make your own costume. The authenticity of that can't be overstated. And people feel that. Like, yeah, I want to see the Hollywood quality stuff, but I can't make that in my garage. But I can make this in my garage. And I think that people are craving that. You know, I think they're craving that. And I think that's why small little festivals like ours really resonate with people.
I love
and they scare the hell out of you, right?
Yes, I can tell. I can attest to it myself that I really genuinely was scared, and I'm going to try to find the video because we caught that on tape. So I'll play that maybe in the interim or in the middle or something. You could hear me actually really truly scream, and then my husband laughing at me because it was real. It was a real scream. And that's a good thing too, you know, that we like to go on a roller coaster, we like to scream. It releases the pent up energies and tensions and so thank you so much. Will you help me just wrap up the interview by telling us what's gonna happen starting this weekend on Friday, December 3rd?
So on Friday, December 3rd, we have our pictures with Yeti and Krampus. And that's pretty much free to anybody who shows up. You can just get a picture taken. We do have an opportunity for you to make a donation to a local charity if you choose to. However, if all you have is a smile, that's what we want. And that's from 7 to 9. It's right here at Paranormal Tower, which is 621 Cookman Avenue in Asbury Park. And at 7, we have day 1 of the Krampus Film Festival. And this year, it's a little bit different because the theater in town closed because of COVID. So we're actually going to be doing it in a haunted gallery in town. And tickets are available on our website at paranormalbooksnj.com or krampusap.com. And then on Saturday, we really have the bulk of our events, which is, it's 5 or 6 hours of just everybody kind of hanging out and doing a lot of different things. So we do have a few vendors that are great. They have Krampus things, they have Yuletide things. All of the vendors are vetted in that they have to make their stuff themselves, and there has to be some tie-in to Krampus. So you're not going to find, stuff that you can buy at Target or Walmart. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's going to be a little bit more special than that. I have a special tent arriving, hopefully in time, and we're going to have what we're calling the Krampus Odeon, which is we're going to be running films from our 2020 film festival continuously in this tent on Madison Avenue in Asbury Park. We also have something called Krampus's Lair, which is a walkthrough on our second floor in our haunted museum. And at 2:00, we have the Monsters of Yule walking tour. 3:00, we have Krampus caroling. And then at 3:30, we have our favorite thing that we like to do, which is the reading of the naughty list, which I literally read the naughty list from our roof. And I encourage anyone who has naughty people in their lives to go to krampusap.com and enter their names, because they will be read aloud to their shame from our rooftop. And then around 4:30, 4:45, we'll line up the Krampuses and we march them down to Kennedy Park, and I make them run. They literally have to run. So we have a Krampuslauf. And that usually takes about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And then the crowd decides who Krampus for the year is, and we crown him or her. And then I like to call it the Krampus tree lighting. In town they call it the holiday tree lighting, but tomato, tomato. The Krampus tree lighting is 6:00 at Cookman Avenue. And we are having a third day this year where we're having brunch with Krampus at 11:00 on Sunday, December 5th, which also includes tickets to the Sunday block of the Krampus Film Festival, which will allow you to see all of the winners and all of the micro shorts from all of our entries the last 2 years. So we have a full weekend of events. And if you go to our website, we do have a hotel partner this year. If you decide that you want to come down and spend a couple nights, the Berkeley Oceanfront Hotel has given us a really nice discount to encourage people to stay over. So that's available on our website as well.
Wonderful. Wow, I want to come to all of this. Thank you so much for talking with me and taking this moment in time and bringing us back to our roots and letting the wild man roam free again.
Yeah, that's my favorite part, seeing them running through the streets.
Yeah.
But thanks so much for including me. I really do appreciate it. And happy Krampus to everybody, or unhappy Krampus, depending on how your behavior has been this year.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Tune in next week for part 2 of my Yule Light and Darkness mini-series. We'll be talking to Jean Fleming, the creator of the Sinterklaas Parade in Rhinebeck, New York. It's an institution. Thank you so much to Lee Chernowitz for the theme music for my program, the exit music, and for other artists from the Free Music Archive for providing some of the Christmas music for this episode. Thank you, wherever you are.